What do you think about the proposals to cancel student loan debt?
Well, I'll say a couple things. First of all, it's very strange that there is no way to discharge student loan debt even if you file bankruptcy. It's a very malicious type of debt in a way.
Yeah.
Um, you can you can almost make any other mistake in society, whether it be credit card debt or mortgage debt or I mean anything, and ultimately it can sort of be discharged, if things really go bad. Not an option with student loan debt, especially if you have private student loans, or if you had federal student loans and then you refinanced, or they got moved over to private student loans. You sort of lose the advantages of the federal program. And again, we're talking about young people in their early 20s maybe having to make these decisions. Um, it's difficult. Do I think we should cancel all student loan debt? No, I don't think we should. I think it's a huge problem. I think we need to stop the skyrocketing increases, but I don't think it's fair to ask the blue collar plumber in Mississippi to use his tax dollars to pay for your English degree that you can't get a job with. That doesn't seem to make sense to me. It's obviously there's a lot of people in very difficult financial situations because of student loans, um, but ultimately you signed your name on a piece of paper and you said, yes, I will. This is what I'm doing. I'm taking these loans. I'm going to the school. I'm doing this thing. Were they ill equipped to make that decision? Possibly, possibly. Maybe we shouldn't be putting that burden on 18-year-olds. Um, but I don't think it makes sense to uh, charge the taxpayers to pick up the tab for people who maybe made a poor decision financially. Um, and I'm worried about setting that kind of precedent and what that means in the future. Um, it's the same reason that it's the same reason to me that I was against government bailouts for the banks, for the auto industry, for the airlines. I am. It sets a very dangerous precedent. If you're the head of an investment bank and you know that ultimately the government's going to be there to catch you, you're going to operate differently. You can take more risk. You can do things that maybe you wouldn't do otherwise, because ultimately, there's there's good old Uncle Sam that's going to come to the rescue, and I think that's dangerous. And so, setting that same precedent in other areas of life, I'm also against it. I don't think there should be this expectation that the government will always be there to bail you out.
Yeah. Yeah. The moral hazard piece of that is what I think stands out the most to me. And, I mean, if we're trying to like connect back to first principles, and I think maybe one of them would be responsibility, like the importance of personal responsibility and taking responsibility for yourself and your actions. And if you know that there's a good chance that some debt you're taking on is just going to get canceled, then there's less incentive to be responsible with taking on that debt,
Sure.
whether it's banks or student loans or whatever.
Yeah, I think you're absolutely right. And responsibility is one of those things that it's like a hard pill to swallow for me, even because there's this idea that by taking on more responsibility, you can improve your life in a variety of ways because it sort of forces you to face reality. And when you have things that you're accountable for, you have to sort of deliver on those things, whether it be a family or a job or whatever it is. Even though I think we kind of talked about this last week. Like it's hard to get off the couch, but that's sort of exactly what you need in it. Sort of when you're struggling. It's hard to want to take on responsibility when you don't have the motivation to do things, but it helps your life. It helps your life in a real way. Um, but yeah, I mean, it doesn't. That's probably not what a lot of people want to hear.
Yeah.
It's probably easy to say, well, it's easy for you to say not to cancel it. You're not being drowned by crippling student loan debt, and that's true. It's true. I don't have that weight, so I suppose I don't have that perspective. But there's also a reason I don't have crippling debt in any area of my life, because I'm very intentional about how I set up my finances, and I stay away from I don't make decisions that are actively hurting my financial future. I very carefully consider those kind of things. So it's tough. It's tough. I know a lot of people out there are struggling. Um, but there and even though we don't have a complete student loan debt cancellation policy in place, there are still avenues. There's federal loan forgiveness programs. There's income-based repayment options. There are options to help people, but it might not be what a lot of people want to hear when it comes to these kind of policies.
Yeah. Well, I can say as somebody who does have tens of thousands of dollars in student loan debt, I still would be really hesitant about like the government just forgiving student loan debt because I worry that it is going to create bigger problems down the line.
Mm. Yeah,
So,
I'm
and
very
could also, continue to like unintentionally promote further increases in tuition.
That's a
Like
good point.
people are going to be less disciplined in taking out loans because they will have an expectation that there'll be another forgiveness policy in the future.
Right.
So schools can charge more, and there's just less incentive to be not only responsible but like efficient or
Mm-hmm.
disciplined.
Mm-hmm.
So one of those things.
Yeah, it's a difficult topic.